Hey everyone. Tonight we're stepping into a world where forgetting wasn't just frowned upon, it could get you humiliated, enslaved, or, if you were especially unlucky, skinned alive in front of your neighbors. Welcome to the courtrooms of the Aztec Empire. You're standing in the heart of Tenochtitlan, the empire's jewel of a capital. The air smells like roasted maize and incense. The skies turned a shade of soft ash blue, and torchlight flickers against the stone walls of a public plaza. People are gathering, whispering, adjusting their woven cloaks, trying not to step on each other's sandals. This isn't a party. It's a trial, and it's about to begin. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing this sleepy little community stretch across time zones. Now, turn off the lights, let the gentle hum of the fan surround you, and let yourself drift quietly into tonight's story. You shuffle forward with the crowd, finding a spot just behind an elderly woman who's balancing a bundle of herbs on her head. Ahead of you, raised slightly above the square, sits a stone platform with a set of judges cloaked in feathers and somber expressions. They are known as Tlaxitlan, wise ones, legal memory keepers, and occasionally the most terrifying grandpas you'll ever meet. One of them leans on a staff decorated with obsidian and quetzal feathers. He does not smile. None of them do. The accused stands in the center of the platform. A young man with a shaved head, his body painted in smudges of gray and black. These aren't war paints. They're shame paints. And they tell you, even from here, that this isn't his first time at court. He's barefoot, fidgeting, trying to look innocent while failing spectacularly. Someone hisses that he stole firewood from a noble's land. Again. You suddenly remember the rumor that nobles get harsher sentences. You're not sure if it's true, but you can see it in the way the judges look at him, as if they already know how this will end. There's no paper in sight, no scrolls, no scribes jotting notes. Yet every judge knows the case, the law, and the historical precedents. The knowledge lives in their heads. You wonder how. How do they remember every punishment, every detail, every sacred law handed down from ancestors who probably didn't even have a word for forget? The answer, it turns out, is complicated and kind of genius. See, Aztec justice wasn't just about guilt. It was about performance. Memory was an art form. Judges trained for years in Kalmakak schools, where they memorized laws not by reading them, but by chanting them, singing them, or embedding them in proverbs so sharp they could double as warnings. One such proverb floats through your mind now, something like, "He who steals once wears rags. He who steals twice wears nothing. He who steals thrice wears nothing forever." It sounds better in Nahuatl, probably. The crowd hushes. A witness steps forward, an old man with eyes that look like cracked obsidian. He speaks slowly, with a kind of precision only achieved by people who know their words might get someone whipped, or worse. He describes the theft. The moon was half. The thief was fast, but not fast enough. The young man doesn't deny it. He says he needed warmth for his child. The judges don't flinch. One of them speaks now, his voice low and deliberate. He recounts the previous offenses, not with a list, not from a book, but through metaphor. The boy who once plucked the maize too early has now burned the stalk, he says. The crowd nods. You nod, even if you're not entirely sure what it means. It feels right. The judges confer. They barely whisper. You realize this trial, though public, is not a debate. It's a ritual, and the ending is inevitable. The sentence is passed. The man will be given to the noble's household as a servant. A year of work and a public flogging with maguey thorns, just to keep things educational. The accused bows his head, lips trembling. He's lucky. Third-time thieves can lose more than liberty. As he's led away, you turn your gaze back to the judges. No parchment, no tally marks, just minds like obsidian knives, sharp, durable, and not to be crossed. You wonder what happens when one of them forgets. Does he lose his feathers? His place on the platform? Or worse, does he become the accused? Historians still debate how consistent these memories were. Were all judges equally precise? Did regional variations cause chaos? Some say yes. Some say the structure was rigid enough to maintain order. Others argue that the human element, the judge's recollection, was both the system's strength and its most dangerous flaw. The torches flicker. The plaza begins to empty. But you linger, picturing the judges going home and murmuring legal chants as they unlace their sandals. Tomorrow, another case. Another chance to prove that memory isn't just knowledge, it's justice. And in this city, forgetting is not an option. The next morning arrives with the smell of damp earth and morning tamales. You stir from a mat woven with reeds, stretch your shoulders, and hear the distant clang of a conch shell echoing through the canals. That sound doesn't signal war. It signals judgment. Another trial is about to begin, and once again, you shuffle through the streets toward the central plaza. Everyone does. Court days in Tenochtitlan are equal parts civic ritual and neighborhood entertainment, with just a touch of existential dread for good measure. This time, the accused is already waiting when you arrive. An older woman wrapped in a worn blue huipil, standing silently, hands clasped tightly in front of her. She doesn't look nervous. She looks resigned. The gossip this morning is that she sold fake feathers at the market, not dyed turkey feathers, which would have been fine, but low-quality fluff passed off as sacred Quetzal plumes. That's not just false advertising, it's spiritual fraud, the kind that could bring dishonor to a temple, maybe even curse a priest's ritual. Everyone's whispering. You hear, "She fooled the flower priest," and someone chuckles nervously. The judges are already seated. You recognize two from yesterday. One of them has a new feather pinned to his robe, turquoise tipped with red. You're told it represents clarity of mind. You wonder if he earned it through years of service or simply remembered all the right punishments last week. In the Aztec Empire, the line between merit and memory is very thin. As the trial begins, the judge, known for using silence like a blade, raises his hand. Everyone falls quiet. A young vendor steps forward, clutching a basket and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He claims he bought a handful of feathers, paid in cacao beans, and was told they came from the highland forests. Instead, he got plumage so dull it made ceremonial masks look like molted chickens. He's not angry. He's embarrassed. That might be worse. The judge's eyes narrow. You can almost see the gears turning behind his furrowed brow. He speaks a single Nahuatl phrase. It means, to sell false feathers is to mute the gods. You feel a shiver that has nothing to do with the morning breeze. The crowd murmurs again. And then comes something unexpected. The judge pauses, gestures toward a child standing nearby, no more than 10, with wide eyes and a bundle slung over his shoulder. The child is asked to recite a verse, not a poem, a law, word for word, in cadence, with emphasis on the names of forbidden acts. He does it flawlessly, and it includes the line about sacred items and their protections. That's how the Aztecs passed on the law, not just through judges, but through children drilled in family homes and schools. If a 10-year-old can remember the consequence for faking feathers, then what's this woman's excuse? See, memory wasn't just expected of judges, it was communal. The laws lived in every market chant, every warning proverb, every bedtime story involving cactus punishments and shameful head shavings. You didn't need scrolls when the streets themselves whispered the rules. The woman speaks now, her voice low. She doesn't deny the act. She says she was desperate, that the real plumes were stolen, that her son is sick. She hoped the priest wouldn't notice, but of course he did. Sacred Quetzal feathers shimmer green with a kind of arrogance. No turkey can fake that. The judges confer. You notice something fascinating. One of them closes his eyes, as if flipping through an internal library. He mutters 3 words almost inaudibly. First time offense. Then nods. Another judge recalls a case from 7 harvests ago. A man who claimed to sell obsidian mirrors, but used polished volcanic glass instead. That man was fined, made to offer public apology, and had his stall overturned in the plaza. The parallel is clear. The woman is sentenced to pay restitution in feathers or goods, and to endure a shaming. Her stall will be upturned. She'll wear soot on her face for 1 market cycle, and she'll stand near the temple gates with a sign indicating her deceit. It's not cruel, it's memorable. That's the point. There are no prisons here, no long-term sentences, no dungeons where shame festers, unseen. Punishment must be public, so others remember. So you remember. As the trial ends and the woman is led gently away, no chains, just the weight of eyes on her back, you can't help but marvel at how smoothly the system works. There's no shouting, no chaos, only a ritual of recollection, and beneath it all, a kind of poetic logic. When memory is the law, the entire city becomes a courtroom. Historians still debate how widespread and standardized this system was. Some argue local customs led to wildly different rulings across the empire. Others insist the judges trained in Kalmakak schools shared core codes that ensured consistency. What's certain is this: if you were an Aztec judge, forgetting was not an option. Forgetting meant letting chaos in. And in Tenochtitlan, chaos was for the gods, not the courts. You walk home slowly, images lingering in your mind. The feathered judge, the shamed vendor, the child reciting legal verse like a lullaby. The city hums around you, alive with rules etched not in ink but in memory. And you begin to wonder, what laws have you forgotten? By the time you return to the plaza a few days later, The stone platform has been swept, the torches replenished, and the scent of fresh copal incense curls lazily in the air. The judges are back. Same stern expressions, same feathered cloaks, though today one of them carries a bundle of maize stalks tied together with colored thread. You raise an eyebrow. Is he making tamales during court? Not quite. What he holds is a mnemonic tool, a bundle known as a tlachialoni, a visual prompt designed to aid memory without writing. Each stalk, each knot, each color represents a legal category or a past case. Blue string for land disputes, red for theft, yellow for temple violations. It's like a file cabinet, only organic and slightly more poetic. Today's case involves a marriage gone wrong. A noblewoman accuses her husband of breaking his vows by secretly taking another wife in a neighboring Kalpuli district. Now, you'd think the punishment might involve a scolding or maybe public shame. But in Aztec law, adultery was a serious matter, especially for nobles whose unions were as much about politics as affection. The accused man, tall and visibly uncomfortable, stands in silence as the charges are read. He's dressed well, but not flamboyantly. You notice his sandals, soft leather, high quality, definitely a noble. He does not speak in his own defense. Instead, an elder from his family steps forward. It's allowed, sometimes even encouraged, because shame shared is shame diluted, and elders are expected to smooth over tensions, or at least cushion the fall. But the judges are unmoved. One begins tugging gently at a thread in the maize bundle. Blue, then yellow, then a double knot of red. You can almost see the memory rising behind his eyes. A previous case, perhaps? A nobleman caught keeping 2 wives in secret chambers. The punishment, then, was the loss of certain land holdings and a public apology during a ceremonial feast. Not quite execution, but certainly career ending. The judge speaks, calmly and without emotion. He begins listing precedent, names, places, sentences. It sounds rehearsed, but it isn't. It's recalled, word perfect, down to the tone. The room feels smaller, more intimate, like the judge is pulling threads through time and weaving them into this moment. No parchment, no clerks. Just one man, a maize bundle, and a terrifyingly sharp memory. But not everyone approves. One spectator mutters that the accused is being targeted unfairly, that judges favor women in domestic disputes. Someone else snaps back that nobles should be held to higher standards. A third person insists the maize cords are unreliable, that they can be interpreted however the judge pleases. This is the shadow side of a memory-based system. It requires absolute trust in the people who remember. Historians still argue about these bundles. Some believe they were purely symbolic, a visual prop. Others suggest they encoded real legal data in an agreed-upon color and not language. A few fringe scholars even compare them to the Inca quipu system, though there's little evidence the Aztecs used knots to that degree of numerical precision. Still, whether functional record or mnemonic crutch, the bundle clearly serves a purpose. It transforms abstract legal memory into something tangible. It anchors the past to the present. The verdict comes quickly. The man must return his dowry gifts, host a purification ceremony, and, most crushing of all, his secondary marriage is nullified before the gods. His name, once unblemished, will now be remembered in song. the bad kind. The kind sung in alleyways when people want to mock your family's honor. As he's escorted away, you can't help but admire the system's efficiency. No delay, no appeals, at least not yet. Just memory, metaphor, and maze. And you begin to think, maybe that's the brilliance of it all. Memory, when practiced this well, isn't fragile, it's sacred. In the Aztec world, memory is a civic duty, a divine obligation, and perhaps the most dangerous weapon a judge can wield. You wonder what the nobleman will remember most from today. The shame, the sentence, or the fact that he was out-argued by a bundle of corn. You come to the plaza early this time, before the conch horn even sounds. The air is still cool, the sky a muted gray, and the stone beneath your feet still holds the chill of night. A few vendors are setting up, and someone's sweeping the last of yesterday's petals off the court platform. You sit, not because you're early, but because you're curious. What kind of case draws a judge with a cactus? He arrives just after sunrise. The judge, a lean man in a robe of deep brown, feathers at his collar, and something strange in his left hand. A fan made entirely of cactus petals, flat, green, and unmistakably prickly. It's not ornamental, it's a tool, and everyone around you knows it. This judge, they say, uses it not to cool himself but to teach lessons. The cactus fan judge doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. A flick of that thing, and suddenly you remember the rules. Literally. There's a rumor that once, during a trial, a forgetful witness was gently tapped on the wrist with it and never forgot a date again. Today's case is minor, at least by Tenochtitlan standards. A young man accused of cutting in line at the market, causing a scuffle over salted fish. The crowd is amused, already buzzing with jokes. Someone mutters, maybe he was hungry for justice. But the judge doesn't smile. This, to him, is not just about fish. It's about order. The accused is brought forward. His tunic is crooked, his face sheepish. He insists he didn't know there was a line, that he was just trying to get his mother's dinner. He looks genuinely confused, or a very good actor. The judge listens quietly, then turns to the market inspector, a stout woman with arms like temple columns and a no-nonsense glare. She confirms the story. There was a push, a skipped turn, and a brief shouting match that ended with someone dropping a basket of chilies. Then the judge does something strange. He asks the crowd to raise their hands if they remember the rule about market order. Nearly everyone does. The rule is simple. First come, first served, unless you're a priest or a very old grandmother. It's common sense. It's also a law. The judge points to a child in the front row and asks him to recite the market chant. He does so with the enthusiasm only 9-year-olds possess. That's when the cactus fan appears. Not to punish, not yet. The judge holds it up and waves it lightly, slowly, as he speaks. Each motion seems tied to a part of the rule, like a conductor guiding memory instead of music. First comes the one who walks, he says, then the one who waits. The fan tilts left. Not the one who runs. Tilt right, or reaches over elbows. It's mesmerizing, like watching law transformed into dance. You feel the cadence settle into your bones. You'll never cut a line again. And that's the point. The young man is not whipped. Not today. Instead, the judge hands the fan to him. For an hour, he must stand near the market entrance and demonstrate the motions to every new customer. It's both shaming and strangely gentle. The sentence teaches the law as much as it enforces it. Even the child watching learns something. Historians still debate whether tools like the cactus fan were used regularly or only in specific districts. Some accounts suggest symbolic items, colored cloaks, bundles of reeds, even maize cakes, served as reminder objects during judgment. Whether fact or ritual embellishment, the story holds power. And in the Aztec world, stories were just another way to remember. As the sun climbs higher, the judge leaves the platform and the crowd disperses. You linger, watching the young man wave the cactus fan in small, careful gestures. He's embarrassed, yes, but he's also concentrating, repeating the rule, imprinting it. You wonder if someday he'll be a market inspector himself, holding the same fan, eyes scanning for elbows. And in that quiet, absurd dignity, you realize something. In a world without scrolls, paper, or pens, sometimes memory needs props. And if that prop happens to be a cactus paddle, so be it. The crowd is thicker than usual today. Word spreads fast in Tenochtitlan, especially when the punishment might involve paint, public nudity, or dramatic shaving. And today, it seems, promises all three. You wedge yourself between two maize sellers who are already placing bets, not on guilt or innocence, but on which color the accused will be painted. You've seen it before, of course, painted faces, bodies marked with soot or colored clay. In the Aztec justice system, punishment wasn't just felt, it was seen and remembered. If memory is the cornerstone of order, then public spectacle is the mortar holding it all together. Today's accused is a merchant, middle-aged, dignified, and furious. He stands with his arms crossed tightly, clearly insulted to be here. His stall, they say, was found selling fermented pulque marked as freshly drawn. A petty offense, but in a city that treats false advertising as spiritual betrayal, it's no small thing. Pulque isn't just a drink. It's ritual, reputation, medicine, myth. The judges arrive slowly, each one carrying a small clay pot. You count 3, red, black, and yellow. No maize bundles today, no cactus fans, just pigment. You realize what's coming, and so does the merchant. His jaw clenches. Witnesses speak. A customer who drank the pulque and fell ill. A temple servant who noticed the altered date glyph scratched into the gourd lid. A market inspector who swears this is the second time this merchant's pulque has raised questions. That changes things. Second offenses mean escalation. The audience leans forward. One judge stands. He lifts the red pot. Red is for deception involving sacred items. Pulque qualifies. It's a gift from the gods, not a mere beverage. The second judge holds the black. That's for shame, public dishonor. The third opens the yellow. Ridicule, a mark of foolishness. You think he's getting all 3. A pair of aides approach the merchant. Gently but firmly, they strip him to the waist. He does not resist, but his cheeks burn with humiliation. The paint is applied in long, deliberate strokes. First the chest, then the arms, and finally a thick band across the eyes, like a living warning sign. You can't look away. The punishment doesn't end there. He's told to walk the entire market perimeter, visible to all, with a sign around his neck. May the gods spit out sour pulque. The crowd doesn't jeer. That would be too easy. They murmur. They memorize. Children will repeat this scene in their games. Don't be like the pulque liar, they'll say, while smearing berry juice on their arms and pretending to judge each other. You follow him part way through the circuit, watching as vendors glance up and then sharply turn away. Shame, here, is a social sentence, one that lingers long after the paint fades. But it also serves another purpose: mnemonic enforcement. You'll remember this the next time you consider lying about your goods. Everyone will. Historians are divided on how standardized these pigment punishments were. Some believe every district had its own code of colors. Others argue for a central system, taught in judge schools and enforced like religious dogma. Either way, the effect is the same. Visual justice sticks in the brain like a song you can't unhear. And while it may look harsh to modern eyes, in a society without jails or written criminal records, paint was memory. Paint was law. As you head home, the sun casting long shadows across the temple walls, you pass a child mimicking the judge's paint strokes with a piece of charcoal. His mother frowns but says nothing, because she, like you, understands. The lesson has already sunk in. You wake early the next day, ears still ringing with the chant from yesterday's trial. May the gods spit out sour pulque. It's catchy in the way a moral warning wrapped in poetry often is. And as you move through the market streets toward the plaza again, you notice. Everyone remembers. The merchant's shame is the city's memory aid now, and it lingers in the air like incense. Today, things feel quieter. Not somber, exactly, just more cautious. The trial you're about to witness isn't about food, or theft, or false feathers. It's about influence. Specifically, the kind bought with fish and obsidian blades. A nobleman is accused of offering a bribe. Not openly, of course. This is Tenochtitlan, not some drunken barony to the north. Here, bribes are subtle. A gift wrapped in ritual phrasing, passed between sleeves, traded with polite murmurs and ceremonial glances. But someone saw, someone told. And now he's here, robes slightly crooked, pretending to be serene. His hair is still perfectly combed. That won't last. The judges today are older, wiser, or just more suspicious. You recognize one of them, the one who once settled a maize border dispute with nothing but a riddle and a painted gourd. He doesn't blink much, and when he does, it's slow and final, like closing a door. The trial begins without fanfare. A temple servant steps forward and explains that the nobleman offered him a gift: 10 obsidian blades and a small dried fish wrapped in blue cloth. The context: a favor, a ruling, a look the servant didn't like. The nobleman, when asked, doesn't deny the gift. He says it was an offering, a token of respect. Not payment, definitely not a bribe, definitely not corruption. The judges do not nod. They do not scowl. They reach into a leather pouch and pull out a ceremonial figurine, a tiny obsidian judge with one arm raised and no mouth. You've heard of this. It's the silent adjudicator, used when a judge is too disgusted to speak or wants the weight of symbol to speak louder than words. Its presence means this trial isn't just legal, it's spiritual. Then the lead judge speaks. Slowly, rhythmically, he begins reciting examples, not rulings, memories, tales. Each one starts the same. There was a man a merchant, a farmer, a priest, all of whom tried to sway a court, and all of whom paid the price. You realize these aren't stories for drama. They're index cards for the collective mind, case law in the form of folklore. And then the sentence. The nobleman is not stripped of land or titles. That would be too easy. Instead, he is sentenced to silence. For a full market cycle, he may not speak in public. He may not negotiate, cannot shout at servants, cannot offer counsel. He is given a rattle to use instead, one made of hollow gourd filled with maize. Every time he needs something, he must shake it. Like a child or a fool. The punishment is clever. It doesn't scar the skin, it scars the pride. And more importantly, it etches the memory. From this moment on, whenever someone hears the soft sound of maize rattling inside a gourd, they will think of this trial, of silence, of consequences. Historians still debate whether the Aztecs truly used symbolic punishments like the silent sentence widely, or whether such stories were part metaphor, part reality. Some sources suggest these forms of discipline were rare and deeply ceremonial, reserved for nobles in cases where shame was the intended currency. Others believe they were more common than we think, their subtlety lost in translation. Either way, you can see the effect. As the nobleman walks away, face flushed and lips pressed tight, you notice a child mimicking his gait, rattling a bean pod like a toy. The crowd chuckles quietly, not to mock, but to remember. That night, as you lie beneath a blanket of woven agave fiber, the soft rattle of dried maize echoes in your thoughts. Law here isn't just something that governs. It's something that echoes, that repeats, that plants seeds in the mind until obedience becomes instinct. And in the distance, you think you hear the faintest rustle of a gourd being shaken. A warning, a reminder, a lesson still unfolding. The sky above Tenochtitlan is streaked with orange and rose this morning, as though the gods themselves have dipped their brushes in fire and whispered, "Let there be spectacle." You step into the plaza expecting a trial. What you get is a festival of memory. Today's trial doesn't begin with an accusation. It begins with a procession, drummers, dancers, and a troupe of actors in vividly painted masks. They move in rhythm, reenacting a tale you've heard before. The theft of maize by a starving farmer, the kind who once fed a whole district during drought. It's not a new crime. It's a story nearly everyone knows. So why the drama? As it turns out, this isn't a current case. It's a reenactment of a famous ruling, one so pivotal, so odd, that it has earned a place in civic education. The accused has been dead for 20 years. His punishment? Still fresh in the city's collective memory. The performance is strangely beautiful. The farmer mask stumbles forward, clutching a clay bowl of stolen kernels. The judges circle him, chanting lines of legal verse. The scene ends with the farmer painted white, head shaved, carrying an oversized maize basket through the marketplace, while children pelt him with flower petals and shouted proverbs. You realize then, this isn't just entertainment, it's pedagogy. The Aztecs, lacking printed books, made law into performance art. Justice wasn't hidden behind walls. It marched through town with music. As the crowd disperses, The real trial begins. A teenage boy stands before the judges, his hair oiled, his expression defiant. He's accused of skipping work on a public building project, pretending illness, sneaking away to nap under a reed mat while others dug irrigation ditches. In most societies, this would be called truancy. Here, it's laziness, and laziness is no small sin. You glance at the judges. One is older, nearly blind, but sharp as flint when it comes to moral violations. He speaks not with fury, but with metaphor. The ditch that grows no water starves the maize. The others nod. This boy, they declare, has blocked the social stream with his sloth. Instead of immediate punishment, the judges make a different choice. They call forth 3 elders from the community, witnesses who remember similar cases. Each elder offers a story, one of a boy who learned discipline, one of a man who never changed, and one of a lazy noble who ended up enslaved. Their words are soft, rhythmic, tinged with caution and layered meaning. Then comes the twist. The boy is not punished today. Instead, he's given a task: to memorize all 3 stories and return in 3 days to retell them, accurately, respectfully, and in public. If he does so, his punishment may be reduced. If not, the standard sentence will apply: public ridicule and 1 month of hauling firewood from dawn until dusk. It's brilliant. If memory is law, then making the boy remember law is the law. And if he learns, well, then maybe there's still hope. Historians still argue whether such performative justice happened weekly, monthly, or only during festivals. Some sources suggest it was common, especially in large city centers. Others believe it was reserved for cases where social cohesion mattered more than discipline. Either way, you can see the wisdom in it. You remember stories longer than you remember statutes. As you leave the plaza, you pass a girl mimicking the actor judges, tapping her chin and saying, "Lazy maize grows snakes." Her friends laugh, and one repeats the line. Just like that, a proverb is born. A lesson spreads. A law takes root. And in a city that remembers through story, today's drama becomes tomorrow's justice. You arrive to find no drums, no dancers, no actors in painted masks, just silence. A thick, waiting kind of silence, like the air right before rain. Even the market stalls nearby are unusually still. You can hear a dog panting somewhere, the faint splash of water in a canal, and the soft crunch of a maize husk underfoot. Today's trial is going to be different. No theatrics, no color, just law. The accused is already seated at the center of the court platform. A man, probably in his mid-30s, with a thin face and tired eyes. He's not a noble. He's not a priest. Just a man from the outskirts of the Kalpuli, wrapped in a faded tunic that smells faintly of wood smoke and damp stone. His crime? Lying. He's accused of giving false testimony in a previous case, claiming he saw a neighbor steal firewood when, in fact, he hadn't seen anything at all. The neighbor was flogged, humiliated, made to work unpaid for the offended household. Only later, after an overheard conversation and a sharp-eared child, was the lie revealed. And now, here he is. In a society without written records, lying isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. False memory is the poison in the bloodstream of public justice. If memory is law, then dishonesty is treason. The judge speaks slowly. He does not accuse, he recalls. He lists cases, not with anger but with precision. Each one begins the same. There was a man who lied. Then come the consequences. A banishment, a ritual beating, a trial where the liar was forced to wear black paint and be paraded with a rope around his neck and a sign that read, "I darken the truth." You watch the accused close his eyes. He knows what's coming. The judge lifts a bowl. Inside is soot, mixed with oil and something else, crushed obsidian dust, maybe. It glistens faintly. The punishment is ceremonial but devastating. The accused will be painted entirely in black and made to walk the length of the market in silence, a burden of wood on his back. Every 10 steps, he must stop and say, "Truth feeds the sun, lies steal the warmth." But there's more. He is also ordered to memorize 100 proverbs, specific ones, moral teachings, warnings, legal metaphors, and at the end of the month, he will stand before the same court and recite them, all of them, from memory. Only then will he be restored. You blink. That part is new. You glance at the people around you, and you notice a few nodding, not out of approval, but recognition. This isn't about humiliation. It's about reintegration. If law is memory and memory is sacred, then redemption must also come through memorizing what you betrayed. Historians still debate whether the Aztec Empire allowed for legal rehabilitation like this. Some sources suggest that first-time offenders, especially commoners, were sometimes given educational punishments, memorization, public repetition, labor combined with ritual instruction. Others argue these stories were later inventions, softened retellings of a harsher truth. But here in this plaza, you see it unfold. Real or not, it feels like justice. The man is painted. The soot makes his features vanish, transforms him into a silhouette of consequence. The burden is placed on his shoulders, not heavy enough to injure, just enough to bend the spine. He takes the first step, then another. On the 10th, he speaks, and though his voice is rough, the words ring clear. Truth feeds the sun, lies steal the warmth. He walks on. You stay long enough to hear it again. And again, each repetition carving the phrase deeper into the air, deeper into your memory. Later, when you're walking home, you whisper it to yourself, just to see if you remember. You do. That night, as you drift to sleep, soot and proverbs swirl in your dreams. Law here is never forgotten, not because it's written down, but because it is spoken, walked, carried, and endured. You return to the plaza the following morning with a strange anticipation, like rereading a book and finding new details you missed the first time. The city seems to hum with memory. Even the birds squabbling over tamale scraps on the temple steps feel like they have seen this before. Today's crowd is quieter, older. You recognize more gray hair than usual, more weathered faces, more people leaning heavily on walking sticks carved with glyphs and family crests. That's when it clicks. This is a third-time offender case, and everyone knows what that means. The accused stands with the weight of inevitability on his shoulders. You've seen him before, twice. The first time, he stole maize and was made to return it and wear soot. The second, he took a chicken and spent a month working in the poultry pens behind the market. This time, it's a clay bowl, a ceremonial one, stolen from a temple offering table. It wasn't valuable in the way gold is, but it was sacred, symbolic, stealing from the gods. That's not just theft. That's forgetting your place in the universe. And in the Aztec legal mind, forgetting isn't just careless, it's criminal. The judges arrive slowly. Their expressions are not angry, not shocked, just resolute. This is what happens next. Everyone knows it. You can feel the knowledge ripple through the crowd. There's no trial today, no witnesses called. The facts are known. The memory is too strong. One judge lifts a painted staff and recites the sequence. First offense, soot and return. Second, labor. Third, he doesn't say it out loud. He doesn't need to. The punishment is ritual flaying. But don't picture chaos or bloodshed. This is not done in rage. This is theater, law, and religion braided together. It's meant to be remembered, not for its cruelty, but for its clarity. The accused does not plead. He doesn't beg. In this society, a third offense is a broken circle, a refusal to learn, to remember, to live within the sacred rhythm. And so, the body becomes the lesson. He is prepared, not violently, but ceremonially. Oils are applied, prayers whispered. A priest, not a judge, performs the act, turning punishment into offering. Strips of skin, they say, represent the discarded layers of one's honor. Sometimes the skin is used in fertility rites. Sometimes it's buried beneath maize fields. Always, it's symbolic. The crowd is silent. No one cheers. No one flinches. Because this is not about vengeance. It's about preservation. The system must remember, viscerally, deeply, that there are limits. Historians continue to argue about the prevalence of ritual flaying in legal contexts. Was it rare? Was it always performed on repeat offenders? Or was it exaggerated by later sources eager to portray the Aztecs as cruel? The truth is likely somewhere between ritual and rule, between belief and enforcement. But here in this plaza, you see it not as brutality, but boundary. Afterward, the platform is washed with herbs and water, and incense is burned. Children are led away before the sentence is carried out. Even memory has its limits. You walk home slowly, heavy with the knowledge that justice here is both structured and unflinching. A warning, yes, but not one written in books. It's carved into minds, into plazas, into skin. And as the afternoon sun casts long shadows across the canal bridges, you murmur an old proverb you heard whispered once in a marketplace. Steal once, they see your hands. Steal twice, they watch your steps. Steal thrice, they remember your face. Today, no one will forget. You're sitting near a tamale vendor at the edge of the plaza when the whispers begin. Not about today's accused, but about the market itself. People are muttering, gesturing toward the rows of stalls lining the square. Some say the judges are cracking down. Others say it's a test. You take another bite of your corn-wrapped breakfast and listen. The case today involves something deceptively simple. A broken measuring gourd. The accused is a trader. Not rich, but successful enough to own a stall in a good location near the Eastern Shrine. He sells amaranth, cacao, and dried fruits, popular stuff. But yesterday, someone noticed that his measuring gourd, used to scoop goods by volume, had been shaved ever so slightly on the inside, enough to cheat buyers by a few beans each time. not much, but enough. He stands before the judges now, arms folded behind his back. He's not denying it. He's saying it doesn't matter, that no one complained, that it's just a handful of beans, that everyone does it, a brave defense or a foolish one. One of the judges lifts his chin. You recognize her. The only woman on this bench, wrapped in a cloak patterned with maize stalks and jaguar spots. Her nickname, people whisper, is Truth Bites. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't frown. She simply holds up an unshaved gourd and begins to speak. What follows isn't a lecture. It's a story about a man who once trimmed his measuring bowl during a famine. A few beans here, a pinch there. By the end of the season, he'd taken enough to feed another family and left a dozen others short. His punishment wasn't lashes, it was exile. Not because he was greedy, but because he broke the market's memory. See, markets in the Aztec Empire weren't just economic hubs. They were memory machines. Rules weren't posted on signs. They were sung by vendors, whispered in haggling rituals, embedded in phrases like, "This is an honest gourd." A crooked measure? That's a lie. And lies multiply. The accused is told to wait. The judges rise and walk among the stalls, inspecting gourds. Dozens of traders hold out their own scoops, proud, terrified, some defiant. When they return, they bring with them 10 more gourds, shaved, altered, some cleverly, some crudely. The sentence isn't just for one man, it's for all of them. All 10 are ordered to carry oversized gourds for a month, painted bright yellow and impossible to hide. They must wear them tied to their backs like burdens, with the phrase, "I stole your faith," painted in red across the shell. Every market day, they must walk the perimeter before opening their stalls. And the first trader, he gets something extra. A sign hung above his stall that reads, "This gourd cost me more than beans." Historians argue whether public markings were common market penalties or symbolic gestures recorded more in poetry than practice. Some suggest signs and burdens were used rarely, only for repeat offenders. Others argue they were essential in cities too busy to track individual cases. But here in Tenochtitlan, what matters isn't the statistics, it's the memory. Later, as you wander past the now quiet stalls, you notice something. Children playing with their own gourds, pretending to scoop, to measure, to check for cheats. One girl insists her gourd is truth-sized. The others giggle and agree. Even in play, the law echoes. And you realize, as the plaza fades into afternoon heat, that this city doesn't need scrolls or guards with clipboards. It has memory. It has shame. It has stories. It has 10 bright yellow gourds bobbing through the crowd like floating reminders that trust, once trimmed, leaves a mark that no one forgets. Today, the drums are back, not loud, but steady, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of the city under stone and sun. The plaza pulses with anticipation. There's a buzz in the air, the kind that comes when something unusual is about to happen. And sure enough, when you reach your usual spot near the front, you see them. The musicians, 3 of them, seated cross-legged just off to the side of the platform. One with a teponazli drum, its slit carved to resemble a serpent's tongue. Another with bone flutes. The third cradles an instrument you can't name, a stringed thing, small and delicate, humming like wind through a reed mat. You ask the old woman beside you what's happening. She whispers back, eyes glinting, "It's a memory song day." The accused isn't visible yet. Instead, the judges begin with silence. Then one of them steps forward, not a judge today, but a memory keeper. His role is unique. He sings rulings, not recent ones, ancient ones, songs preserved like sacred seeds, passed down from teacher to student in a form that cannot be forgotten. He begins. The melody is simple, hypnotic. It tells the story of a man who stole maize from a drying rack during festival week, long ago, when the rain gods were especially moody and the harvest had just begun. The punishment wasn't immediate. The man was made to sing his confession daily for a season. He wore no shame colors, no signs. His voice was his penance. As the song ends, the accused is brought forward. She is young, a priest's apprentice. She stands with her head bowed, arms crossed. Her crime? Neglect. She forgot to prepare the incense for a dawn offering. The rite had to be delayed. A priest stumbled through the invocation without it. The gods, it's whispered, were not amused. Now, in most places, this would be a slap on the wrist. But here, among the Aztecs, ritual precision is sacred. Forgetting isn't just a personal failing, it's a breach of harmony. When memory fails a priest, the whole city shivers. And so, the punishment fits the offense. She is sentenced to learn the memory song of the maize thief. Not just the lyrics, but the melody, the breath patterns, the posture. She will perform it each morning in the temple courtyard, just before the priests begin their rites. Not as a solo, but as part of the invocation. Her voice will carry the weight of both apology and preservation, the judges nod. The musicians strike up the tune again, slower this time. She listens carefully, mouth moving along with the rhythm. You can see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Not shame, but attention, determination. She will not forget again. Historians still puzzle over these memory songs. Were they truly performed as part of court punishment, or did they originate in temple rites and later become a form of discipline? Some argue they were used only in major cities, where trained singers could preserve legal history like oral scrolls. Others suggest they were common among priests and apprentices, tools for aligning memory with sacred duty. But whatever the origin, the effect is the same. A song once sung becomes part of you, harder to ignore than a painted sign, harder to fake than a sobbed apology. As the apprentice steps back, one of the judges murmurs a line you've heard before. Better a cracked voice than a silent law. The old woman beside you nods. Later, as you make your way home through the market, you hum the melody. It sticks. A simple tune about stolen maize and forgotten incense. But it stays with you. Because here in Tenochtitlan, justice doesn't always march. Sometimes it sings. You wake before sunrise, stirred by a dream of smoke and sweet corn. When you step into the cool morning air, the mist rising from the canals seems thicker than usual, as if even the city is trying to obscure what's about to unfold. You move quickly toward the plaza, guided by the soft beat of a drum and the quiet, reverent tone of the crowd. Today's judgment, they say, will be decided by food. You arrive to see something unexpected. A small table at the center of the platform. set carefully with a ceremonial mat, 2 bowls, and a clay plate shaped like a jaguar's paw. It smells faintly of herbs and roasted maize. This is no ordinary trial. It's tlacualistli, the ceremonial food test, an ancient form of judgment so rare that most citizens have never seen it. But you've heard the stories. The accused sits nearby, legs crossed, eyes fixed on the ground. A healer, or rather, a would-be healer. He's accused of poisoning a neighbor, accidentally, he claims, with a bad batch of medicinal stew. No signs of intent, no history of harm. But the victim? Still weak, still vomiting. The neighbors demanded justice. The judges, instead of punishment, demanded proof. And so, here we are. The judge rises and explains. The accused will prepare the same herbal mixture, same ingredients, same cooking method, same incantations. Then he will eat it, alone, in silence, under observation. If it harms him, he is guilty. If not, he is cleansed of blame. It's not science, it's tradition, a blend of ritual and consequence. He begins to cook. You watch as he selects leaves, roots, a pinch of crushed toadstone, a few grains of sacred salt. He stirs in silence, lips moving with what might be prayer or recipe. The mixture bubbles low, thick with earthy bitterness. When it's ready, he pours it into the jaguar plate, bows his head, and drinks. Then, the waiting begins. 10 minutes pass, 20, a half hour. He breathes steadily, eyes half closed. The judges say nothing. Neither does the crowd. Even the birds seem to have gone quiet. A child coughs. Somewhere, a reed flute starts to play a soft, looping tune. 40 minutes. The accused is still upright, sweating but not ill, not staggering, not convulsing. The lead judge nods. Another rises and declares him innocent, not of error, but of malice. His punishment? Not exile, not shame, just memory. He must return to the victim and teach them the correct preparation, step by step. Then, for the next 4 market cycles, he must cook only in public, under witness, and invite elders to critique every batch. His penance is transparency. His restoration is repetition. You marvel at the elegance of it. Here, the system recognizes imperfection. It distinguishes between crime and clumsiness, guilt and ignorance. And it punishes not to destroy, but to refine. Historians are still divided on the authenticity of the food trial. Some argue it was rare, even mythologized, more symbolic than procedural. Others believe it was common in the outer districts, where traditional medicine blended into law. What's clear is that it relied on risk, willingness to prove innocence through the body itself. As the crowd disperses, someone offers the healer a gourd of clean water. He drinks gratefully, then begins packing his herbs in quiet reverence. You watch him for a moment. He looks older now, not because of age, because he knows what it means to be remembered, not for a mistake, but for surviving it. You pass a trio of young girls sitting cross-legged nearby, pretending to mix imaginary herbs in clay bowls. One of them says, "Now you drink it," and the others shriek in laughter. They don't know the full weight of today's trial, but the lesson has already begun to root. That night, as you lie on your mat, the scent of herbs still lingering in your nose, you wonder what modern laws might taste like if we were all asked to swallow them. In Tenochtitlan, Justice isn't only about memory, it's about the courage to ingest the truth and live with the flavor. The first thing you notice is the smoke, thick, aromatic, curling from the edges of the Kalmakak, one of the great learning houses where young nobles train in war, ritual, and the complex choreography of Aztec law. You're not usually allowed this close, but today the doors are open. Something is happening. You follow the scent of burning copal and sweat, drawn toward a courtyard surrounded by carved pillars and stone benches slick with morning dew. Inside, a group of boys and young men sit cross-legged, bare-chested, each holding a polished stone in one hand and a bundle of dried maize stalks in the other. Their eyes are wide, not with fear, but with focus, because today is sentence rehearsal day. This isn't a trial, it's training. Here, the apprentices practice punishments, not performing them, but memorizing them. The conditions, the terms, the metaphors. Each sentence must be recited perfectly. Who, what, where, and, most critically, why. The goal is not just to remember the outcome, but the reasoning behind it. Justice in the Aztec world isn't just about precedent, it's about poetry. Every punishment must be explainable in metaphor. You watch as a teacher paces before them, voice like gravel soaked in honey. What is the sentence for a man who sleeps through a corn blessing? He barks. A boy replies, he is to wear the husk and walk backward through the fields, for he turned from the gods. The teacher nods. Another question, another answer. Some are humorous, others are grim, but each one carries a rhythm, a cadence, as if the law must be sung into muscle memory. Then comes the sweat lodge, not a reward, a test. The students are led into a low, dome-shaped hut. Steam billows from its mouth like breath from the underworld. Inside, they recite again, this time while enduring heat and darkness. The belief is simple. If you can remember the law in discomfort, under pressure, amid disorientation, you will never forget it. You crouch near the edge, listening to muffled voices echo from within. A thief of feathers is to pluck his own regret, comes a phrase. Then another. A liar's shadow is longer than truth. It's beautiful, eerie, and oddly moving. These aren't just punishments. They're parables etched into the skin of a city. Historians often question the accuracy of such training. Did young judges truly memorize full legal codes by chant and metaphor? Or are these descriptions exaggerated, rituals designed more for ceremony than substance? But standing here, watching sweat drip from brows as proverbs fall like seeds onto hot stones, you find the truth irrelevant. What matters is belief. The system works because everyone believes the memory lives in the body. As the students emerge, blinking in the light, their teacher hands each one a handful of ash, not to keep, to scatter, a symbolic release. Forget what you've rehearsed, and the ashes mark your path. Remember, and the ashes stay behind. You walk beside one of the younger students for a while. He tells you, breath still ragged, that today was his first successful run. No missed verses, no stumbles. He says the sweat helped. It burned the forgetfulness away. You smile, because now you understand. Law here is a kind of heat. It steams into your lungs, melts into your blood, presses itself against your skin until it becomes part of you. And once you've carried it through the sweat lodge, you never let it go. It's midday, and the sun is high, hot enough to bake the plaza stones until they smell faintly of scorched maize and sandal leather. You find yourself weaving through clusters of shade, passing market stalls and steaming stew pots until you reach the courthouse steps. Today's trial has already begun, but it's not what you expected. No criminal, no thief, no noble with too many wives or merchant with a crooked gourd. Just a man standing stiffly, sweat soaking through his tunic, flanked by two guards who look mildly embarrassed. The charge? Wearing the wrong loincloth. Now, to be clear, this isn't about fashion. In the Aztec world, clothing is code. The type of fabric, color, cut, and ornamentation tells the entire city who you are, your rank, your duty, your obligations. Wear something above your station, and you're not just playing dress up. You're impersonating authority, and that can get you in serious trouble. The man in question, a commoner accused of wearing a noble-style loincloth with a border stitch reserved for high-ranking warriors. No one thinks he's planning a coup. But in a society where social structure is memory made visible, this kind of mistake isn't taken lightly. The judge lifts a wooden staff carved with tiny glyphs representing various garments. This, apparently, is the wardrobe list. He points to the offending stitch and asks a question. "Where did you learn to wear this?" The man stammers. He says it was a gift from a cousin at a funeral. He didn't know it was restricted. He just thought it looked sharp. There's a murmur of amusement. Someone snorts. But the judge doesn't smile. He turns to the crowd and recites a familiar proverb. A borrowed feather does not make you fly. And that's where it gets interesting. The punishment is not removal of the garment. It's repetition of the lesson. For 3 days, the man must walk the public roads wearing a tunic entirely covered in drawings of different class garments, etched in charcoal and clay, labeled, annotated. He becomes a walking textile manual. Everywhere he goes, people can point and say, "Ah, so that's what not to wear." And he must recite aloud, every 100 steps, "I mistook the stitch, and now I teach." Historians often marvel at how deeply Aztec culture entwined dress codes with law. Clothing wasn't just decorative, it was declarative. Violating those codes was seen not as vanity, but as forgetting your place in the social weave. And forgetting, as we've learned, is practically a capital offense. But this punishment is clever. It doesn't isolate, it integrates. It turns shame into education. By the end of the day, children are following him, giggling, calling out garments by name. One kid yells, "Hey, that's pre-sleeves." And the man mutters, "Correct." He's becoming useful, memorable. Later, you overhear a vendor describing a new customer. She wore merchant fringe, not temple yellow. I checked, just like the walking guide taught us. Law, here, has legs. You watch the man round the temple steps, sun gleaming off his sweaty, illustrated tunic, and you realize something strange. He looks proud now, not defiant, more like resolved, like a man who's figured out that even being wrong can make you valuable. You whisper the phrase under your breath. I mistook the stitch, and now I teach. It's catchy, it sticks. And in a city where memory is everything, sometimes the best way to remember is to become the lesson yourself. The afternoon rain arrives early, not with a thunderclap, but with a sigh, a gentle drizzle that slicks the stone courtyards and sends the smell of wet earth spiraling into the air. You duck beneath the edge of a market awning, where vendors huddle under woven mats and tilt their stalls to keep their cornmeal dry. The plaza is quieter today. Trials in the rain tend to feel slower, heavier, like the city itself is pausing to reflect. Today's case is unusual. It's not about theft, fraud, or social blunders. It's about the emperor. Well, an emperor. Specifically, one who forgot. The story, told in low voices and cautious tones, is this. Years ago, during a spring harvest festival, the emperor, young, newly crowned, sharp-eyed, was to recite a lineage of past rulers as part of the rites. Not just names, but their achievements, their failures, their contributions to the divine balance. It's not a casual speech. It's sacred. Memory here is lineage. Memory here is legitimacy. And he skipped one, an old one, a warrior king with a short reign, but a long shadow, a man who once held back invaders with a clever irrigation trick and a handful of poisoned fish. Forgotten. Not deliberately, perhaps, but publicly. The reaction was immediate. Not outrage, not chaos, just silence. A silence so thick it spread across the plaza like spilled ink. The priests noticed. The elders noticed. The gods, it was said, certainly noticed. You weren't there, but today, you're going to watch what happened next, because this mistake became a lesson, a new protocol, a new ritual etched into the skin of the legal system. The judge speaking today isn't addressing a criminal. He's telling the story to a gathering of apprentice scribes and legal aides, all seated cross-legged on reed mats. You listen too, at the edge of the gathering, pretending to inspect a basket of tamarind pods. The judge's voice is gentle, almost meditative, the kind you expect from someone who's told this story dozens of times. He explains that after the incident, the emperor ordered a temple built in the forgotten king's name, small but carved with his full history, no detail spared. And not just that. The emperor decreed that from then on, no recitation would be made without a memory check. And so they created it, the circle of recall. It's still used now. You watch as it's demonstrated for the students. A ring of 8 elders, each responsible for a segment of a memory chain. When a speaker must recite a law, a lineage, or a judgment, these elders stand as checkpoints. Miss a name, miss a phrase. The chain breaks and the recitation is stopped. Not to shame, but to correct. To repair the thread before it frays. Each elder is trained to remember a specific block of history. They know the feel of their segment like a flute player knows their notes, intonation, pacing, rhythm. When a speaker falters, the elder gently raises a hand, and the speaker must pause, take breath, and start again from the last known point. It's not punishment, it's a live edit. And it's oddly beautiful. The students try it, fumbling, giggling, then quieting as they realize the challenge. Memory under pressure is slippery. The boy in the front stumbles on the third name in a line of tax reformers. The girl beside him flubs a poetic description of a law against river dumping, but they're not scolded. Instead, they're asked, "Where does your mind pause? That's where you must plant a flag." you begin to see the brilliance of it. In a world without books, a single misstep can erase decades. The circle of recall doesn't just preserve accuracy, it prevents ego from corrupting truth. No one speaks alone. Everyone is part of the memory. Historians are split on the nature of the circle. Some believe it was purely ceremonial, used for royal pronouncements and religious rites. Others suggest it permeated education, trial procedures, even marriage contracts. A few argue it was never formalized, just idealized. But here in this courtyard, it's as real as the drizzle beading on your tunic. You stay long enough to watch one young girl complete a full chain. 8 names, 8 stories. She beams. The elders nod. The judge smiles softly and says, "Now you are a thread in the cloth." The phrase is familiar, an old saying, likely older than the city itself. You whisper it to yourself, testing its weight. It feels sturdy, timeless. As the lesson ends, the students rise and bow to the judge, to the elders, to each other. You see pride on their faces, not because they know everything, but because they've been reminded how little they can afford to forget. You leave the plaza just as the rain lightens, stepping over puddles that reflect the clouds like mirrors. The city feels thoughtful today, as if it, too, is remembering something important. And as you walk, you whisper one of the names the girl recited, just to see if it stays. It does. You're standing in the middle of the market when it hits you. A smell, pungent, earthy, slightly sour. Not unpleasant exactly, just unforgettable. You follow it through the narrow paths between vendors until you reach a small stand under a stretched cloth canopy. Bundles of herbs hang from the top beams. Clay bowls line the shelves, and behind them all sits a judge, not in his feathered robes today, but in plain woven cloth, eyes half-lidded, like he's listening to something no one else can hear. This judge is famous, though not for the usual reasons. He's called the scent keeper. Whoa, it's said he can remember every case he's ever heard based on the smell of the people involved. A faint note of garlic on someone's skin might recall a theft in the garlic fields. A whiff of lime water might link him to a case of temple graffiti near the tanner's quarters. And then there's this. Some claim he knows when someone is lying just by the way their sweat smells. You'd scoff if it weren't for his record. He's never been wrong, not once. And today, you're here to see him put that nose to work. The accused is a young woman. She stands with her arms crossed tightly over her chest, feet bare, mouth pulled into a taut line. She's been brought here not by guards, but by her sister, who claims she lied during a neighbor's trial last week, lied to protect a friend. Now the sister says her own reputation is suffering, that justice is fraying. There's no evidence, no written testimony, just 2 women, one story, and a man who remembers in scent. The judge listens in silence as the sister speaks. Then, without a word, he lights a bundle of dried herbs and fans the smoke gently in the accused's direction. She doesn't flinch, but her skin beads with sweat almost immediately. The judge leans forward, nostrils flaring just slightly. Not dramatically, just enough. He closes his eyes, and then he speaks, not to accuse, but to ask questions. What did the room smell like when you spoke? She hesitates. Like fish stew, she says. The neighbor had just eaten. The judge nods slowly. That's correct, he murmurs. But you didn't mention that before. Why now? She stumbles over her words, trying to explain. The judge waves his hand. He's already decided. He doesn't say she's guilty. Instead, he issues a memory sentence, unusual yet fitting. For the next 13 days, she must carry a satchel of specific herbs, known for their strong, distinct scents: copal, crushed cacao, chili oil, ground maize. At every sunset, she must visit a different judge and name what scent she's carrying, while also reciting a proverb related to truth. If she misses even one, she must restart. The lesson is clear. Memory is multisensory. It's not just sight or speech. It's everything. And forgetting doesn't always mean failing to remember facts. Sometimes it means failing to notice what's around you. Historians debate whether sensory trials like this were ever widespread, or whether they're embellished by later retellings. But evidence from ritual texts and oral law strongly suggests that scent, sound, and touch were deeply entwined with judgment, not for proof, but for precision. The accused bows. She takes the satchel from the judge without complaint. You can already smell the chili from where you stand. She walks away slowly, as if the herbs are heavier than they look. You stay a little longer, speaking to a vendor nearby who says that once, years ago, the scent keeper helped resolve a land dispute simply by recognizing the soil's smell on a man's robe. He knew the fields, the vendor says. The liar didn't. And just like that, you begin to think about memory in a new way, not just as recitation, but as presence, attention. The world speaks through aroma, color, texture, and if you train yourself to notice, it remembers for you. You wander back toward your home, nose catching every detail along the way: wet wood, roasting beans, the faintest trace of crushed insects underfoot, all of it stored, all of it waiting to be recalled. The children are gathered near the school courtyard this morning. Kalmakak students in orderly rows and younger Telpoch Kali. Apprentices perched on flat stones, shifting occasionally under the watchful gaze of a gray-haired instructor. You slip into the background, half hidden behind a pillar carved with spiraling snakes and flowering maize, not to disrupt, just to observe. Today's lesson isn't arithmetic or calendrics or ritual song. It's legal memory. And not just any part of it. Today, they're learning morality through dolls. You blink. Did she say dolls? Yes. At the center of the courtyard, the instructor sets out a row of carved wooden figures. Not childish toys, but detailed icons. One holds a clay jug. Another has a face split into two colors, red and ash gray. A third clutches a maize stalk with a bite taken from it. Each one represents a type of offense: deceit, disrespect, theft, laziness, cowardice. You can't help but smile. They have names too, poetic and biting. Heart wanders, sleeps while others, dig, talks two ways. You'd remember them too if they were part of your school day. The instructor calls forward a child, maybe 6 years old, maybe 7. He's told to pick a doll and tell a story, not about the doll itself, but about someone who acts like it. He chooses talks two ways. He clears his throat and launches into a story about a man who promises to help with a canal project but never shows up. The other villagers have to finish the work without him. Later, he claims he was praying for strength. The judges don't believe him. He's made to wear his sandals backward for a week because his words walked one way, but his actions went another. The children laugh. The teacher nods. A lesson is logged, not just in the mind, but in the mouth. Another child picks sleeps while others dig. Her story is about a woman who fakes a leg injury during maize planting, only to be seen dancing later at a festival. She is sentenced to carry a gourd full of wet earth for 3 market days while chanting, "Let my laziness water your work." The stories come one after another, quirky, pointed, vivid. They're not meant to mock. They're meant to encode, to stick. If these children ever break a law, the punishment won't be foreign. It will already live in their play, their proverbs, their games. And the dolls? They're passed down, polished by years of handling, changed slightly with each generation. Talks 2 ways used to hold a flute. Now he holds a mask. Heart Wanders used to be genderless. Now sometimes she wears a cloak, sometimes a necklace. Law here isn't static. It evolves by memory, reshaped by those who carry it. Historians often debate the use of physical objects in moral instruction. Some argue the dolls were ceremonial only, props for festivals or elite schools. Others cite fragments of glyphs and oral texts that describe their use in daily training. But almost everyone agrees. Aztec pedagogy understood something modern education often forgets. If you can make a lesson funny, or rhythmic, or visual, it lasts. And what about justice? The instructor reminds the children, judgment does not come only from others. You must learn to judge your own feet. That line sticks with you. Later, in the market, you see 2 children whispering near a stall. One has a lump of bread, the other does not. The first child hesitates, then breaks the bread in half and shares it without being asked. They nod once, solemnly, and say, "Heart Wanders would have kept it." You're stunned. They weren't told to do that. They remembered to. That night, you lie on your back, staring at the woven thatch of your roof, thinking about dolls, proverbs, and the strange wisdom of children. In Tenochtitlan, justice doesn't start in the plaza. It starts in play, in metaphor, in the way a tiny wooden figure with a lopsided face can teach an entire city not to lie. And somewhere in the shadows, you swear you hear the faint clack of dolls being packed away for tomorrow's lesson and all the mistakes yet to be made. There's a tension in the air today, one you can't quite name. The plaza feels the same, stone underfoot, the scent of roasted squash drifting from nearby vendors, distant gulls screeching lazily over the lake. But the people aren't murmuring. They're watching, listening, waiting. Today, a judge is about to make a correction, not to someone else's testimony, to his own. It's rare, so rare that some say it's never happened, but the older ones remember, and you're about to witness why they never forget. The accused is not a thief or a liar or a man with a wrong loincloth. It's the court itself, its memory specifically. A merchant, stooped with age but still clear-eyed, claims he was misjudged 5 years ago. Wrongly fined, wrongly shamed. He says the judge, one of today's sitting officials, confused him with another man, a neighbor. Similar voice, same tunic pattern. Back then, he protested. No one listened. But now, that neighbor has confessed on his deathbed. The real thief was him all along. The merchant has come not to demand restitution, but to request recognition. An apology, not in coin, in memory. The judges confer in private. For a long time, people shift on their feet. A child drops a sweet potato and doesn't pick it up. You hear someone whisper, "He'll never admit it." But eventually they return. And the judge in question, a tall man, regal and quiet, steps forward. He begins to speak, but not in defense. He says the name of the merchant. Then he says, "I was wrong." 3 words. The crowd doesn't cheer. It doesn't gasp. It just breathes. Slowly, deeply. The judge goes on. He recounts the trial from 5 years ago, detail by detail. The accusation, the testimony, his own mistake. He describes the pattern on the tunic, clouds and maize, and how that became the hinge of misjudgment. He remembers everything, including the error. Then he announces his sentence, not for the merchant, but for himself. For the next 13 days, he will wear the garment of the shamed, the ash-gray tunic, usually reserved for first-time offenders. Not in silence, but while seated among his peers on the bench, he will continue his duties, but with a painted glyph across his chest. I too forget. It's a powerful moment, not of humiliation, of humility. The merchant, tears glinting at the corners of his eyes, simply bows. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. You think of all the judges you've seen, stern, precise, often theatrical. But this is something else, a reminder that the law, even here, has cracks, and that healing them is not weakness, it's strength. Historians often debate whether judges in Aztec courts ever admitted fault publicly. Some say such scenes are romanticized, unlikely in a system that prized stoicism and ritual correctness. Others insist that mechanisms for correction, though rare, were sacred acts tied to spiritual balance. That forgetting wasn't unforgivable, but unacknowledged forgetting was. You don't care which camp is right, you saw it. Later that day, walking through the side streets near the lake, you pass a boy with charcoal and a flat piece of tile. He's drawing a figure, a judge, wearing a tunic marked not with rank, but with truth. Another boy leans over and asks, "Is he the one who remembered too late?" The first one nods. "But he remembered," he says. "So it still counts." You pause. Repeat the words under your breath. It still counts. That night, as you sit under the slow-turning sky, you think about memory not just as a tool of justice, but as a form of forgiveness. Because sometimes, remembering what you got wrong is the most righteous thing a person can do. And in a world ruled by recall, even judges must remember how to say, "I forgot." You're halfway through a tamale when you see him, back bare, shoulders sun-darkened, muscles stretched like woven cords. The man walks slowly through the central plaza, not in chains, but with dignity, and something else, a tattoo, a massive one. It sprawls across his back from nape to waist, inked in black and faded red, a series of glyphs so intricate it takes you several heartbeats to decipher even a fraction of them. There's the symbol for fire, one for maize, another for silence, a trio of curved lines that represent community. Together, they tell a story. His story. He's not a criminal anymore, but once, long ago, he was. You follow, keeping a respectful distance as others part to let him through. People nod, whisper, not in fear, but in recognition. His name is Toltecayotl, though few call him that now. Most just say, the man with the back. And his back? It's a ledger. He was sentenced 20 years ago for 3 crimes. Not all at once, but over time. Arson during a family dispute, false testimony during a land debate, and then, worst of all, abandoning a flood barrier project during a monsoon. That last one caused real harm. Homes lost, fields destroyed, one child swept away. There was no jail, no exile. Instead, the court devised something different, permanent, public. His punishment was to wear his memory. Tattooed by temple scribes trained in symbolic language, his back was transformed into a living record, not to glorify him, not to shame him, but to ensure no one forgot, least of all him. Each glyph corresponds not just to his offenses, but to their resolutions. The fire, for the arson, countered by a year spent rebuilding homes. The silence, his vow of truthfulness, upheld across 5 trials where he served as a key witness. The maze, fields he replanted. The community lines, the irrigation projects he completed without rest for a full cycle of the moon. And here's the wild part. When each act of restitution was complete, a new mark was added, a counter glyph, almost like a stamp of rebalancing, not erasing the past, but building on it. You manage to get closer as he kneels near the temple's edge to light incense. Someone nearby whispers, "He's earned more than he lost." Another replies, "But he never forgets." He doesn't speak often, but today he's invited to do so. The plaza quiets as a younger man, the son of the family affected by the flood, calls him forward. With a cracked voice, he thanks him, publicly, for the work, for the truth, for not running. Toltecayotl only nods. Then he turns, slowly, letting the city see his back again, letting the sun highlight every scar, every stroke of ink. A man in the crowd whispers, he is his own codex. Historians still debate whether tattooed sentences like this were common or symbolic. Some glyphs carved into temple stones seem to depict similar punishments. Others argue these stories are apocryphal, embellished by oral tradition. But no one disputes the logic. In a society where memory equals law, why not use skin as scroll? You pass a child later trying to draw on her brother's back with charcoal. He yells, "I didn't steal your bread." She replies, "Then you get the truth glyph." They collapse in laughter, and you think, maybe that's the most powerful sentence of all. One that doesn't end, one that grows, one that says, you did wrong, you fixed it, and now you help others remember how. Hadi, as you head home, the scent of incense still clinging to your tunic, you whisper a phrase you heard in the crowd. You're woken by birdsong today. Not the usual screeching gulls or chattering macaws, but a softer trill that seems to come from a garden wall nearby. You rise, stretch, and decide to follow it, weaving through narrow alleyways and over a series of shallow canals until you reach something unexpected. It's a garden, a judge's garden. Tucked behind high walls carved with spirals and fish scale patterns, the space opens into a lush tangle of medicinal plants, blooming flowers, and rows of clay figurines half sunk into soil. Some are shaped like maze gods, others bear tiny tools, hammers, weaving combs, ink brushes. Each one is labeled with a name, scratched into their base. You're not alone. A group of apprentice judges is gathered around a low platform where the judge, a squat man with a voice like river stones, tends to a pot of flowering sage. He doesn't lecture. He points, he asks. He lets the garden do the talking. Each plant and figurine represents a case. That one, a cactus with a slash across its base, marks a land dispute between brothers that was solved with shared irrigation rights. The clay woman holding a jaguar tooth, a merchant who once sold false amulets, then redeemed herself by sponsoring a temple dance. This is no ordinary garden. It's a mnemonic museum, not built for beauty, built to be remembered. The judge walks them through it slowly, explaining how each piece was added after a trial, placed not randomly, but according to a system. Theft cases in the southern quadrant, ritual violations in the east, family disputes under the shade of a guava tree. Then he stops beside a small stone marked with a single glyph, a hand reaching for nothing. He crouches and says, "This is the case we forgot." The apprentices go still. The judge explains. Many seasons ago, a man was punished for selling fake salt. His sentence was served. But no one recorded the reason. No glyph was etched. No metaphor tied to it. Over time, people began to forget the cause. Some thought it was laziness. Others believed it was theft. And so, the sentence lost meaning. This stone is the reminder of that failure. A patch of memory eroded. The apprentices are silent. You are too. The judge smiles faintly and says, "We remember better when we plant our mistakes." He hands each apprentice a seed, tiny, dark, bitter smelling. They are told to bury it in the garden beside a case that moved them, not because of the crime, because of the resolution. You watch one girl place hers beside a clay figure holding a broken pot. "That was the man who confessed without being caught," she says. "He reminded me that shame isn't always bad." Historians rarely mention these memory gardens. A few codices contain illustrations of them. Symbolic, maybe, possibly real, maybe confined to a few regions. But it doesn't matter. You're standing in one. You see the logic blooming everywhere. Law here isn't just passed down, it's grown, watered, rooted in place. As the lesson ends, the judge gathers his apprentices and hands each a piece of bark paper with a single glyph drawn in charcoal. "You will forget a case," he tells them. "It's certain, but you will always remember the garden." And you believe him. That evening, as the sun filters low and warm through the clouds, you return to your mat and trace the lines of your palm, wondering what kind of glyph it would hold. A judge's mistake? A neighbor's kindness? A child's correction? In this city, where every plant is a parable and every figure tells a story, you realize that justice doesn't always live in verdicts. Sometimes it grows quietly in the dirt. You feel it in your calves before anything else. The slow, aching climb of the temple steps, hundreds of them carved by hands long dead but never forgotten. Each one a story, each one a small test of memory and breath. You're not alone. A procession winds its way upward beside you. Not priests, not warriors, litigants, petitioners, accused and accusers alike, all making their way to the High Court, the Tecpan Tlahtocayotl, the Temple of Appeals, where only the most serious cases or complex rulings are reviewed. Up here, forgetfulness is dangerous. You reach the summit and step into a vast stone hall, flanked by columns shaped like serpents. It's quieter than the lower courts. No market noise, no chickens, just the wind and the sound of sandals brushing against polished floors. The judges here don't wear feathers. They wear silence. They sit on mats, perfectly still, their hands resting on obsidian plaques etched with condensed glyphs, tokens of rulings past, of arguments remembered. They are here to confirm, to correct, or to overturn, but only if memory demands it. Today's case, a misnamed child, a boy from a fishing family, was registered, formally, under the wrong ancestral line. Not a clerical error, a misstatement during a naming rite. The priest had a cold. The mother was nervous. The wrong glyph was carved into the temple record. No one noticed until now. The problem? The family to which the boy was mistakenly assigned owns a strip of lakeside land. His real family does not. And when the boy began collecting reeds from the area, a neighbor objected, citing land law tied to lineage. What's at stake? Property, reputation, identity. The lower court ruled against the boy. Today, the family climbs to plead correction. The judges don't ask questions. Instead, they listen to 4 recitations. First, the naming priest, now elderly and nearly blind. He speaks slowly, his voice cracking, but still carries the tone of ritual in every syllable. Second, a glyph reader from the local temple, who explains how the miscarving occurred, confusing 2 nearly identical symbols, one meaning reed-born, the other fish blessed. Third, the boy himself, who recites his lineage going back 4 generations, not from a scroll, from memory, word perfect, with dates tied to lunar cycles and festival rains. And fourth, a witness, his grandmother, who sings a family song mentioning the lake, the reeds, and the midwife who used them to wrap the boy's umbilical cord. It's not dramatic, it's quiet, devastatingly exact. The judges don't speak. Instead, they consult a high priest who performs a reading from a coded bowl filled with maize kernels dyed in sacred colors. It's symbolic, yes, but also a way to anchor decision in ritual, not whim. The verdict? The glyph will be corrected. The boy's name will be recarved. The land will be divided, part gifted in honor of his memory labor, part returned to the original family. And the priest who made the error, he is not punished, but he must return each week to teach young novices the difference between the 2 glyphs that cause the trouble, for the rest of his life. Historians argue about the reality of these appellate courts. Some say they were rigid, closed to commoners. Others insist they were surprisingly flexible, as long as the memory was clear and the performance solid. Here, truth doesn't just lie in paperwork. It lies in song, in speech, in lineage, recited without pause. You descend the steps slowly, behind the boy and his family. They don't smile, they don't cry. They walk with the grace of those who've had their identity restored, not granted, just returned. You pass a group of children at the base of the temple, playing with sticks and drawing glyphs in the dust. One boy points to another and says, Wrong name. The accused recites a fake lineage with exaggerated flair. They all laugh. Even in play, the memory holds. And you think, law at the top of the temple is just as fragile as it is at the bottom. But up here, where the air is thin and the voices are strong, memory doesn't fail, because it can't afford to. You wake from dreams filled with smoke and bells, only to realize they weren't dreams at all. A low, rhythmic chime echoes across the city, carried by the wind like a whispered name. You rise and follow it, half curious, half drawn by something older than habit. At the edge of the plaza stands a woman dressed in layers of midnight blue, embroidered with stars. Her hair is wrapped in coils, her feet bare on the cool stone. She's not a judge, not exactly. She's a dream reader, a Nahuali, called in when cases slip through the seams of reason and into something stranger. Today, the judges have turned to dreams. The accused is a potter. His offense? Failing to complete a funerary urn for a high priest, twice. On both occasions, he claims he forgot. Not from laziness, not from rebellion, but because something in his sleep told him to wait, told him the design was wrong, told him the soul it was meant for had not arrived. He's brought nothing today. No evidence, just dreams, just a voice in the mist. The judges could dismiss him outright, but they don't. Because in this city, dreams are not just shadows of sleep. They're considered messages, and sometimes they hold memory better than waking minds. The Nahuali is here to listen. She begins by anointing the potter with oil, scented with sage, tobacco, and crushed bark. He kneels. She places her fingers on his temples and hums softly, a melody older than law. Then she asks him to recount his dreams. Not just the words, but the colors, the textures, the sounds. He does. He describes a black jaguar standing in a flooded field, a woman with a broken clay eye, a child singing the name of the wind backward. The judges say nothing, but the dream reader nods. Slowly, she turns to the audience and for the first time speaks. He remembers something that has not yet occurred, she says, and so he cannot forget what is not finished. The judges murmur. One nods thoughtfully. They deliberate. And the ruling is as strange as the case. The potter is not punished, not formally, but he is placed under dream probation, a real condition. For the next full lunar cycle, he must sleep inside the temple courtyard, under supervision, with his dreams recorded each dawn by novice scribes. If the dream returns, if the design is revealed, he must complete the urn. If not, he will be assigned to community labor. No shame, no lashings, just grounding. The Nahuali nods again and disappears, as quietly as she came. Historians still debate the extent to which dream evidence influenced Aztec jurisprudence. Some claim it was rare, used only when conventional testimony broke down. Others insist dream interpretation played a vital role in priestly courts, especially in cases involving timing, death, or sacred crafting. But everyone agrees on one thing: dreams were never dismissed. As the potter bows and accepts his strange sentence, the crowd shifts, unsure whether to feel relief or awe. A child whispers, "Will he dream of us next?" You smile. Later that night, passing by the temple gates, you see him already lying down, arms folded across his chest, eyes closed beneath the stars. A novice sits beside him, stylus ready, waiting for words to tumble out of the silence. And you realize, here even sleep is part of the record. Because in Tenochtitlan, forgetting isn't always about what you fail to recall. Sometimes it's about what hasn't yet been remembered. It begins quietly. Two men, two memories, and one truth caught between them like a bird that refuses to land. You arrive just as they take their places, opposite sides of a painted bench, their backs stiff with pride, their eyes locked on the judges. They don't shout, they don't accuse, they recite. Because this isn't a new case, it's an old one, 20 years old, and both men claim to remember it best. A boundary dispute, a single stone marker between two maize fields, long since eroded, now the cause of a fresh harvest feud. One man says the marker stood beside a crooked tree. The other insists it was 2 paces from a ceremonial cairn, now buried beneath mud and goat prints. There's no record, no painting, no clay stamp, just memory. And today, memory must duel. The judges do not rule, they listen. This is a memory trial, a rare form of arbitration where facts are less important than consistency, detail, tone. The judges aren't looking for evidence. They're looking for truth told without effort, truth that lives in the body. The first man begins. He describes the day vividly. The sun was cruel, he says. The priest's sandals broke. A boy dropped a maize husk in the wrong field. His voice is steady, almost musical, every image crisp. You're impressed. Then the second man speaks. He counters the same memory with different details. There was no boy, he says, just 2 dogs fighting in the dirt. The tree was not crooked, it was hollow. They go back and forth for over an hour, each one folding more layers into the day. Who stood where? Who held what? What the old woman said when she saw the dispute. It's astonishing. Like watching 2 actors improvise a shared play with competing scripts. The judges take notes, not with ink, but with beads placed in clay bowls, each color signaling strength of imagery, emotion, contradiction. It's a kind of silent voting, and the bowls fill slowly. Then comes the final phase, the recall duel. Each man is asked to close his eyes and describe the smell of the fields that day. The first man hesitates. The second man says, "Burned squash and goat dung. The wind was blowing from the south." A judge nods. Then they're asked what a priest ate that morning. The first says tamales. The second says fish stew and adds, "He dropped a bone in my satchel. I still have the scar." He lifts his shirt. There it is, faint but real. That settles it. The bowls are counted. The second man's truth holds. The land is restored to him, not as punishment to the other, but as confirmation. A memory with more edges. A memory that made others remember too. The first man doesn't rage. He bows. Quietly. The judges thank him for his testimony. In this city, even incorrect memory can be honorable if spoken with clarity. Historians argue about the legitimacy of such trials. Some call them too subjective. Others marvel at how oral cultures manage complex disputes without scrolls. What they all agree on is this: Aztec law prized witness memory, not because it was perfect, but because it revealed something deeper, who had paid attention. As the crowd disperses, you overhear a vendor recounting the trial, already adding color. He remembered the stew. Can you believe it? Another adds, and the wind, from the south like a blessing. You walk home slowly, retracing the details in your mind. The dogs, the wind, the stew. You remember them too. And you wonder, if you had to defend a memory, what details would save you? You're barely in the plaza when a gust of wind whips through the stone corridors, scattering flower petals and whispers in equal measure. Today's case, people say, involves a vault, not one filled with gold or maize or precious feathers, a memory vault. You follow the murmurings to the edge of the temple compound, where a judge, retired, revered, barely able to walk without the help of two carved canes, has returned for one final act of service. He holds the key to something few in the city even remember exists, the archive of the unwritten. No, it's not a library, not a scroll chamber. It's a subterranean vault beneath the temple, filled not with text, but with memory tools. Objects, scents, textures, and spoken phrases sealed in jars, folded into cloth and hung like fruit from the wooden lattice walls. Today, the vault is being opened. Why? Because a ruling from 20 years ago has been challenged. A family claims their grandfather was wrongly convicted of ritual desecration, urinating near a sacred grove. They say the case was fabricated by a rival, and they want the sentence revoked from the public record. But there are no surviving witnesses, no painted account, no known glyph, only the vault. The judges agree to consult it, not to erase the past, but to remember it more fully. The vault is opened in ritual silence. The retired judge leads two aides through the low passage, lighting bundles of sage and snapping his fingers to signal each turn. You're not allowed inside, but you press close to the temple wall, where you can hear his voice echoing faintly as he calls out what he finds. Obsidian comb, wrapped in red bark, sandal strap, damp, still scented, a rope knot with 5 turns. Each object has meaning. See, when trials ended, the judges sometimes preserved a trace, not to document the case, but to make its memory recreatable. A piece of cloth worn by the accused, a chant repeated at sentencing, a pouch of dried herbs used in ritual cleansing. These were stored in coated bundles and only accessed in extreme cases, where oral recall alone might falter. The aides returned slowly, carrying a small box. Inside, a gourd of scent, a prayer stone, a whisper jar. The crowd leans in. The jar is placed on the platform. A judge uncorks it, and the sound that escapes is not a word, not exactly, but a voice. Thin, brittle, but audible. It's a sentence, a phrase repeated during the trial. He walked with empty hands, but full shame. The prayer stone is rubbed, and a glyph is revealed beneath the soot, the symbol for witness recanted. The scent gourd, still pungent with Tilton, a flower used only in false confession cleansing rites. It becomes clear. The original trial ended with a reversal. The grandfather was accused, but later absolved. The punishment was never carried out. The shame, however, lingered. It was passed down as if the sentence had stuck, until today. The judges declare the record corrected, not rewritten, just re-remembered. The family weeps quietly, not from joy, but from release. Historians speculate wildly about these archives. Some say they're myth. Others believe they were used only by the priestly elite, tied to dreams and omens. A few have claimed to see fragments, scent vessels, whisper jars, but never a full archive. You, standing there, have no doubt. You've heard the jar speak. You walk home differently that evening, thinking about what it means to bottle memory, to fold a sentence into cloth, to carry a truth so fragile it can only be passed in silence until the moment comes to open it again. And you whisper a prayer to the night air. Let my memory live kindly. Let it open only when needed, and let it never forget to forgive. It begins with silence. No drums, no conch shell, no whispers from the crowd. Just you standing in the plaza alone, because today the trial is yours. You don't know how it happened exactly. Maybe it was something you said to the wrong vendor. Maybe you cut a line you didn't see. Maybe you forgot a law so obscure no one even remembered it existed until now. But the judges did. And now, here you are, before the same platform where you've stood so many times before, watching, learning, remembering. Only now, all eyes are on you. The head judge rises. He doesn't accuse. He asks, do you remember the law you forgot? You open your mouth, but nothing comes out. Not because you don't know, but because your mind is swimming with too much. The feathers, the soot, the maize bundles, the dolls, the sweat lodge, the gourd trials, the scented satchels. You've absorbed it all. But which one did you break? They don't tell you. That's part of the punishment. You must remember it yourself. A memory sentence. The final test. You're given a scroll, not with words, but with textures. Woven symbols, patches of cloth, seeds, smooth stones, rough bark, cold beads, each one tied to a punishment, a law, a moment from the city's judicial tapestry. You must walk the plaza once and name aloud the moment you forgot. You take the scroll. You walk. You pass the temple, where a child is drawing a face with soot on a stone. Shame paint. You didn't lie. Not this time. You pass the reed stalls. A merchant with a gourd. You didn't cheat a measure. You paid in full. You pass the cactus, blooming beside the tribunal steps. Cactus. You feel your breath catch. You did step in line too soon. You pushed past someone when the conch called for order. Not long ago, not with force, but you stepped forward without waiting. You did forget the rhythm. You turn. I stepped too early, you say. The judges nod. The judge with a cactus fan rises. He hands you the same object you once saw used to teach a boy who cut in line. The prickly green paddle, tied with red string. You hold it. Your sentence? Not shame, demonstration. You must walk the plaza with the fan, showing others the rhythm. Not to mock, to teach, just as it was taught to you. You begin. One step. Pause. One hand raised. One word spoken. Wait. It feels strange, humbling, quietly right. As you walk, a vendor joins you. Then a child. Then another. By the time you finish the circuit, the plaza is full again. You return the fan to the judge. He smiles. You are no longer accused. You are part of the memory now. Historians will never write about this trial. It's too small, too gentle. But in this city, those are the ones that last longest. The ones that ripple outwards in whispers, footsteps, careful pauses. And as you leave the plaza, back into the soft golden hush of evening, you feel something shift inside you. Not shame, not pride, but belonging. because in Tenochtitlan, to remember the law is to be forgiven by it, and to forget is to be gently reminded until you never forget again. The city quiets. The trial is over. The plaza has emptied. The judges have returned to their homes, to their mats, to the low hum of nighttime insects and the soft rustle of wind through hanging maize stalks. And you're still here. You sit alone on the edge of the platform, the stone beneath you still faintly warm from the day's sun. Above, the sky stretches wide and endless, painted with stars like crushed shells scattered across obsidian. A hush hangs in the air, not empty, but full, as if every wall and alley still remembers what happened today. You breathe, slowly, fully, the kind of breath that comes not after a race, but after a realization, a memory. Somewhere nearby, a woman calls her child in for sleep. A dog barks twice, then stops. Water laps gently against the edge of a canal. The world has not changed, but you have. Just a little. Just enough. Because you've seen what memory can do. You've seen it wielded like a blade, like a balm, like a whisper that saves someone from shame. You've seen memory dressed in feathers, painted in soot, tattooed in glyphs across a man's back. You've heard it sung, watched it bottled, tasted it in ceremonial food. You've seen it fail and be forgiven, and now it's part of you. You shift slightly, lying back against the cool stone. Your gaze turns upward, where the stars blur just a little at the edges. Not from tiredness, from peace. The kind that comes after something is made whole again. In the distance, a drum taps once, maybe for ceremony, maybe for a child refusing sleep, maybe just because the city likes the sound of its own heartbeat. You don't need to know. You close your eyes. The sound of the fan returns, soft, repetitive, not mechanical, but human. A rhythm you'll carry now, long after this night. A lesson with no ending. The air smells of memory, smoke, stone, maize, and the cool breath of the lake. You let it wrap around you. Let it settle you. You've made it. You remembered. And even if you forget again, the city will remind you, gently, patiently, like a teacher who knows that learning isn't a destination. It's a rhythm. The stars keep spinning. The stories keep growing. The silence deepens. You're safe. You're held. And you can rest now. Good night.